Okay, so this is going to be a brief introduction about how to join two pieces of cardboard together with planar construction. So for those of you in my sculpture survey classes, this is one of your projects, is to make a cardboard spirit animal. So whatever animal that is up to you. But the method of construction for this is planar construction. So there's going to be no glue, no any kind of adhesives or anything like that. We're just going to cut slits in some cardboard and join them together. And it's a really basic mode of construction, particularly for cardboard, but you can do this even with wood and other materials as well. So it's a basic mode of construction, but it can be applied to a lot of different mediums. So what you'll need is you'll need some cardboard, obviously. So I have some little cardboard pieces here. And you can go to a recycling area and get some cardboard boxes, or you can buy some poster boards from Walmart or one of your big box stores, or any kind of cardboard would work, really. You just need to make sure that you're accounting for the thickness of your cardboard, so however thick it is, and I'll talk about that in just a minute, because that's going to affect how you put these pieces together. All right, so any kind of cardboard would work. Doesn't matter if there's any kind of signage or print markings on it, just any kind of cardboard. You'll need a measuring tape or a ruler just to get your measurements right. You'll need some cutting implements, and you have kind of a choice here. So I have some just regular old scissors, great for cutting apart bigger pieces or just cutting down the cardboard. I also have a box cutter or a utility knife here, literally a box cutter, so you can cut boxes apart this way. Or you have an X-Acto knife. So some of you probably already have an X-Acto knife from previous classes, like Design 1 or things like that. So this works great too. With these, you want to make sure that your blades are sharp, right, and your scissors are sharp, because the sharper your tools are, actually the safer it's going to be. Because if you're working with a dull tool, that's actually more dangerous than working with a sharp tool. Because if you're working with a dull tool and you're trying to push through that piece of cardboard, it's going to be infinitely more troublesome, and you could potentially hurt yourself. So you want to make sure that you have either a box of extra blades, or just make sure you have sharp pair of scissors, things like that. So these I've had for a while, so they're still cutting pretty okay, but it might be time for a new pair coming up soon. And sometimes you can actually get scissors sharpened, so depending on the type of scissors you have, you can call up the company and ask to sharpen them for you, so that's always nice too. And I also have a cutting mat here, which is not necessarily required, but it's nice to have, because you don't want to cut up whatever surface that you're cutting on, right? Especially if you're using the box cutter or the X-Acto knife. So a cutting mat is really nice to have in that respect. But with that said, you can always just use what I've used often is like the back piece of cardboard from a sketchbook or things like that. Or you can even use like a larger piece of cardboard, right? So you can use this as a backdrop for your cutting surface. Especially if you're working at home, and if you're working on your parents' dining table or something like that, you want to make sure that you're not cutting into that so you don't ruin the surface. The same goes for our benches here. You want to keep our bench surfaces as neat and tidy as possible, and we don't want a bunch of cutting marks into it. So do also make sure you have some kind of either mat board here, or cutting mat, or any kind of like thicker cardboard or things like that. Okay, so that's just the basics of what you'll need to get started. And so I've cut 2 circles out here, so I use just a circle template. So one of these guys here, to cut out 2.5-inch diameter circles. And you don't necessarily need one of these. If you have a compass, that'll work too. But I'm just using this to make my cuts a little bit easier. And I ended up cutting it mostly with an X-Acto knife. I'm cutting just straight down and kind of just poking all the way through, making just a series of small cuts, as opposed to trying to jamming it in there and cutting all the way through. But again, you can use a utility knife or a pair of scissors as well. And depending on the complexity of the shape of your animal, you're going to want to choose the right cutting tool. So that's going to be sort of dependent on whatever shape that you're going for. I found the X-Acto knife to be easier for these little circles here, so just FYI. Okay, so now I want to join these 2 pieces together like in an X form. So if I'm going from up above here, I want them to be joined like that. And the way I want to join them is that when they're together, I want it to be nice and flush on all edges. So it'll be like a small little sphere that I'm going with. So what I want to do is make 2 cuts, one one set here and another set here, so then I can basically key them together and I'll make a little sphere. So you'll also notice that I marked out the center of my circle here, because so when I make my slits, it's going to be the radius of that diameter. So if this is 2.5, your radius would be 1 1/4, right? So, but you'll also notice I haven't actually marked out where my slits, or how thick my slit is. And again, that's going to be dependent on the thickness of your cardboard. So the thickness being how wide it is here, right? So depending on what you're working on, that's going to be different. So if you're working with chipboard, for example, that's going to be a little bit thinner. Or if you have double-walled cardboard, that's going to be a lot thicker, right? So again, depending on whatever piece of cardboard you're working with, you're going to want to measure that accordingly. So I'm going to take just a rough measurement here. It's a little bit over 1/8 of an inch, but I can probably squeeze it to make it fit 1/8 of an inch. It's actually more like 3/16, so I'll go with that. So we're making 2 3/16 inch wide cuts, right? So now what I'll do, so this is my center line here essentially, so I'll mark 3 32nds on either end of this and extend them upward to make my slit. So I'm doing 3 32nds because that's half of 3/16, so I need 3 32nds on either side to get a full 3/16. And again, this is my center line here, and it doesn't matter which one I choose, I just need to be, make sure I'm on the same side there. So I'll go ahead and measure that. And I'm gonna kind of eyeball it here, so I might, so 3/16. So if I measure, so here's a 16th, so I'll do, so 3/16 would be just a little bit past that 1/16 mark. Again, if I measure it, so this is the little nick here is that 16th. So if I go a little bit past, just halfway past that, and I'll do the same thing up top. And again, it doesn't have to be exact, but the closer you get it, the better. All right, so it looks about right. You can also just measure your piece of cardboard on here too. So you can take that up here and kind of eyeball center and just trace it. So that's an option as well. And then I will take some kind of straight edge to draw my lines up, just so you can see what I'm working on here. All right, it's a little tapered here, but that's all right. So now I'll go ahead and cut that. So I'll use my straight edge to help guide me. And again, I'm using the X-Acto knife here because I'm stopping at that nice little point. So I'm just gonna go straight down and just do a series of cuts all the way through the cardboard. And again, I can use a utility knife here too. And I'm not putting a lot of downward pressure on, I'm just letting the tool do its job essentially. And once I get all the way towards the bottom, just flip, do the next one. Again, I got a little tapered here, so I'm gonna go off my line just a tad. Oops. What's also nice, you can get a corked back ruler, so that'll provide a little bit friction so the ruler doesn't want to move around on you. So that's an option for this too. I just happen to have a triangle here, so that's why I'm using that. All right, so that's all the way through, and then I'll just kind of cut that out. All right. So make sure to go all the way through at this point. Cut this little section out. I could just peel that away. All right. So now I got a little slit there. So I'll do the same thing for this other one. And like I said in the measuring implement video, I believe, the more exact your ruler is, the more exact your measurements are going to be. So again, I'm kind of just eyeballing it here, but I am taking more or less accurate measurements, or at least for the purposes of this project. So you can, and the nice thing about cardboard is it's just cardboard, right? So if you screw it up a little bit, it's not the end of the world, and you can just get another piece. Because again, you can get this at a recycling center, or if you just ask a store for any kind of extra boxes that they might have that they're trying to get rid of. That's, you know, you could be as resourceful as you need to be with this project, which is nice. Okay, so I'm going a little faster just for the sake of time. Cut that out. I'm just kind of following my line as best I can. This is an ergonomic X-Acto knife, so if you have one of those, that'll be a little bit nicer to your hands. Take that part out, come out here. Okay. So now I got two equal-sized pieces, so I should be able to just key them together, just like that. All right. So that's kind of the basics of making just a little sphere here, but again, the more complex your animal is, the more complex your joinery might have to be, but this is like kind of bare bones minimum of what we're going for here. So more often than not, you won't be working with exact measurements, but you can check out the PowerPoint I have in your Canvas accounts for more information. There is actually an example of an elephant broken down into pieces and then assembled together. So you can take a look at that and just have fun with this, right? So it doesn't need to be overly complicated, but it's nice and flush here, and yeah, that'll do the trick. So that's making a sphere.